welcome to Widnes Rugby Chat episode 23. Special edition this week coming from the Widnes Members Monday on Tuesday event from this week, which included some great insight with Chief Executive Phil Finney. Dave Rolt was hosting in his brilliant way as normal. There was also Kieran Purtle and Hep Kale as well, and they took questions from the floor. In this week's podcast, we're just going to have the clip with Dave and Phil. It's about 40 minutes long, I think. Lots of insight from Phil Finney about the club, the restrictions placed upon it, new signings, talk about full-time as well. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's insightful for those of you who didn't make it. Thanks to our sponsors, as always, Musical All Sorts, Arnold, Gorse Financial Management, PD Law and Deals Jewellery. Hope you enjoy it. Please do leave any questions and other comments under the videos as usual, and I'll try my best to get back to them as best as I can. And I'll put the rest of the evening in next week's show, so hope you enjoy it.
A wide-ranging list of questions for you, and I'm hoping you can give us some good, informative answers to them. I think the point I'd certainly like to start off at is, it feels like, I'm sure we all feel, so I'm sure you do the same, it feels like a lifetime ago that the club was in such dire straits, and yet it's less than 9 weeks ago. So I think before we start looking forward, I think it's important for Phil to give everyone in the room an understanding of what exactly the situation was back then, and how dire, how close to extinction the club was before we were rescued by the new board headed by our chairman of the board, Chris. So let's go back to that moment in time then, Phil. Just give us a bit of clarity on what was the exact reality of the situation. A lot of people did a lot of guessing, and there was some mistruths put out on social media now, but what was the actual reality? People, just to give you an understanding where I want to come from. People, think the club went into administration, so the debt's all wiped, and we've got a clean slate to play with. But give us an understanding of what it actually was.
Well, I think it's important to say from the outset that tonight we want to be really honest with everyone in the room. I think we said from the outset that this sort of new regime wants to articulate the truth and be transparent with fans. I think we were really fortunate that when it did hit the fan, and the fans and everybody, the community knew how much trouble we were in, that they stepped forward. So I think it's important that, I feel to a certain extent the honeymoon period's over. And I think in terms of us moving forward, we've got to share with everybody the challenges that we've got coming. But I think, as we just talked about there, it was only 9 weeks ago, and I think we do sometimes need a bit of a reminder that it was the 20th of February where there literally wasn't any money in the bank whatsoever to pay anyone. Obviously the players got paid the day after, that was by the RFL. So that didn't come from ourselves. On the 22nd of that month, we were placed into administration. So, we were left, there wasn't a penny in the bank, pretty much. And the debts that we were left with were enormous. So that was the situation, we were in at that point. We were hours from going into liquidation. So that day where the board were negotiating with the administrators to buy the club.
My birthday, actually, that day.
Was it?
Yeah, that's
right. It's a good home. Yeah. Is that why you weren't in?
Yeah. Oh, come on, mate. How you the jokes, okay? Everybody's dropping that.
He's very good at disappearing when it's tough. No, but we were literally hours. The club was hours away from going into liquidation, and for those people that don't know what that means, the club was gone. So there would have been nothing left here, and it wouldn't have been until next season until anyone could have done anything about that. They could have tried to relaunch the club. There was a suspicion that some of the people that were previously involved wanted that to happen, so they could come back and possibly, get the club a little bit cheaper or whatever. Or get the club for nothing, to be quite frank, but we would have been without a club. I think that we need to be mindful of that at the moment. But it was in a really, really dire situation. And I think, you know, personally for me, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Chris. You know, Chris, Roger and Peter Morris were there from the very outset. From the point I got involved with going to Media City and that they were there from the start. And I think if they hadn't have been there and they hadn't remained involved, we never would have had the impetus to then go to the fans. The work that Jason did with Vicky was overwhelming really, and obviously the other directors came forward, but without, you know, Chris and the rest of the board members, this wouldn't have been possible. So, you know, I think what we've got to remember is that this club needs to represent the town, and it needs to represent the fans as well. So it's not a case of, you know, us being the decision makers and operating unilaterally. What we're going to try and do is make sure that we share our challenges and hopefully people from the community can come forward and support us.
Well, hopefully that's very much what tonight's about, or certainly the start of, you know, step in that direction. Just picking up on a couple of things that you mentioned on. I've got 3 bullet points here. Debt details, how severe was that? Staffing levels at the club, you know, what impacts that had on the business going forward. And something that a lot of people were aware of, and probably still not, that the club's still in special measures. You know, when did we ever get put in special measures? Why did you get put in special measures? What's the implication of being put in special measures? Just see if you can give us a little insight into them 3. So it's debt details, staffing levels, special measures.
Well, in terms of the debt, there were obviously prolonged discussions about what was going on prior to administration, and one of the advantages of going to administration was allegedly that you become debt-free. Prior to administration, the debts were big. You know, the amount of money that was owed to the council was massive. The suppliers that we owed money to was pretty big as well. But there was also, you know, a lot of what they call rugby debt, which we've come to learn about after the event, which is things, you know, money that's owed to the RFL from the previous regime, money that's owed to other clubs from the previous regime. So in terms of the debt, you know, we aren't debt free. We aren't debt free. We're still unfortunately having to pay off debts that the previous club accrued. The game is such a small sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's agents, there's other clubs, there's medical staff, medical specialist surgeons and whatnot that we've had to pay, because if we didn't pay them, they wouldn't engage with us in the future. So it's not, it hasn't been, you know, the slate hasn't been wiped clean by any stretch of the imagination, and you know, we've had to do the right thing and honour some of those debts.
Just so you can keep them supply chains open. Staffing levels.
Well, this shocked me, to be fair. I think we need to go back to sort of 2018 to start with this one. And I went yesterday, I was sort of making a note of the impact, firstly of relegation, but then of administration. Now, this time last year we had 42 full-time staff at the club. We had 17 what you call performance members of staff. So that's staff working with the first team, from coaches to strength and conditioning to medical staff, right the way through the academy. There was 11 at the first team, and there was 6 throughout the rest of the club within the academy environment. Post relegation, obviously, you know, we had to make some savings there, and some people moved on. So we went down to 26 full-time members of staff at that point. And post administration, we're down to 15 members of staff. Unfortunately, the department that's been affected the most is probably, you might disagree with me, Dave, but is the rugby department. The rugby department's been affected more than any other department, which we need to address, and we need to try and rectify that moving forward. But we've got, you know, obviously we've got Kieran that's working at first team level. We've got Grant, Ryan, Liam Myler that are working at first team, 19s and 16s. We've got Curtis Marsh that's doing sort of all the education stuff. So it really is, you know, the rugby side of things have been affected, and what we've endeavoured to do is make sure that we're still running everything that we should be doing in the first team, the 19s and the 16s, but to be quite frank with everyone, it is taking its toll. on the individuals that are doing that, and it's not sustainable by any stretch of imagination.
Yeah, it's bad, isn't it? That's almost, it's like 60% of the staff gone, isn't it? And people were always probably misunderstood that we were operating on a small staff as it was, and by comparison to mega clubs like Leeds and Wigan, possibly we were, but the fact of the matter is, and that's what I think we need to state tonight, facts. The fact of the matter is we've lost 60% of the off-field staff, yet we're still, the staff that are left, that are still owed money, by the way, from, and you've been one of them as well as myself, from not being paid in February. They're still having to perform admirably, which I think you'd all agree, the people who work at the club, the social media lads, the community people, performance lads are doing a great job, and long may that continue. Special measures, how does a club get put in special measures, and what is the implications of special measures?
Well, the RFL place you in special measures, and they place you in special measures because they're worried about the financial sustainability of the club. So that's pretty much, why we're in special measures at the minute.
When did we actually first get put in special measures?
It's got to be said, we've been in special measures since last year. So I think Liam Hood was the last player we were allowed to bring in. So we've been in special measures since the very start. So the challenge is for us is to obviously to try to get out of special measures, and what that means, if we can get out of special measures, there's an opportunity then to be able to bring players in. Now, we have brought a couple of lads in, so obviously Lewis Johnson came on loan for a month, which you imagine the costs of that, were certainly not astronomical or excessive. Dom Speakman has come in as well. Now Dom, because he works in the day and he runs quite a successful business as well, Dom's took an opportunity with us, and without breaking any confidence, it's not costing us the world for that. Liam Hood in a way did us a favour. Liam Hood was on he was on a fairly decent salary. Liam, he had the opportunity to get a full-time job and go and play at Lee part-time, so that helped us a little bit and allowed us to bring Dom and Lewis in. But at the moment, every decision that we want to make in terms of trying to bring a player in or bring a player in on trial, which we did do yesterday. We've had a lad, Josh Ganson, was coming on trial for us for 4 weeks. That was subject to it costing us nothing to bring him in that trial period.
Steve Ganson's lad?
Yeah, unfortunately, mate, yeah. So yeah, we are still in special measures, and until we can demonstrate to the RFL, and that's difficult, working with the RFL, I'll be quite frank, it's not been easy. They've got, obviously the RFL have got a big job on, with all of the clubs that they govern. Obviously the split with Super League and the RFL has probably made that a little bit more complex as well. But we've got to try and demonstrate that we are sustainable financially moving forward.
So what is it? Are they like monitoring our financial position, and it's all well and good us sort of putting an ambitious cash flow together? Is it all about evidencing that cash flow? Is that what gets you out of special measures?
Yeah, it probably is. I think rightly so. When the club's been bought by the new directors, we were conservative, or the board was conservative, and I think rightly so. I think in the past, the club wasn't conservative, and they were probably extremely aspirational in some of the money and the sort of budgets were creating, the cash flows that were sent to the RFL. And in hindsight, you start to think to yourself, well, do you know what, we should have been more aspirational, and maybe we wouldn't be in special measures now. But I think rightly so, we thought we were doing the right things, erring on the side of caution. But unfortunately, that appears to have sort of bit us on the bum a little bit. But no, I think in terms of the evidence in where we're up to, the fans have been unbelievable. In terms of, we're still, I think, the best attended Championship club on average. At home games, I know we had a bit of a drop off for the Dewsbury game, but it was still nearly 4,000 people, which was more than double what we got at the back end of last year when we were in Super League. So I think we're up on a lot of the areas that we've forecasted. It's just now it's demonstrated to RFL that is the case.
it's just a case of keeping it going, isn't it? It's got to be keep that momentum going and keep that engagement going, which obviously tonight's a little part of that. Josh Canton, while we're on the subject, I remember when he was a 16-year-old lad, just to give everyone an insight who he is and what his background is and what have you. We tried hard to get him as a 16-year-old lad. He was a much sought after hooker, am I right in saying?
You're right in saying, yes.
Yeah.
he was obviously he's from St Helens, Josh, so he's obviously got some limitations before he starts. He played for Blackrock, and he was at St Helens as a scholar, and we sort of watched him from afar for quite a while, and obviously Steve's quite a vocal person, as most people know, and we sort of got wind that he was looking to probably move from St Helens, because at the time I think Kieran Gunning was the head coach, and Jonah, his son, was in the academy set up there, and he was a hooker as well, so I think he thought, well, maybe with pathways blocked, I'll look elsewhere. So I think Wigan definitely did, we did, and I think Warrington had a little go at getting him here, and or getting him to their clubs, and he chose Wigan, which is fair enough. At the time we didn't have a bad player underneath him in Danny Walker kind of thing, so it was no great loss, to be fair, at the time. But Josh obviously went to Wigan, and he was a really high performer as a young player. I think it's fair to say it's probably not worked out, Wigan, as well as he would have liked it to. And obviously at Wigan there's been some. Obviously you had Michael McClure in front of him, he's had Tommy Lewis, Sam Powell as well have been in front of him there. So it's not, that's a pretty tough ask to try and get past players of that calibre. I think he's reached an agreement with Wigan. They've allowed him to move on, so I got a call last week from his agent asking would we have a little look at him and could he come on trial. So I think where we are at the minute, we have got a thin squad, a really thin squad as it is. In that squad as well, there is an awful lot of young players in the squad. Obviously JJ at the minute is doing 80 minutes in the middle, and credit to him, but if he carries, the way he plays as well, if he carries on doing that, he's going to be fit for nothing soon. So, he might put a bit of pressure on him, and Don Street, and help out.
Yeah, he made his debut, didn't he, in the first league? Right.
I think he played 8 games a week. I think he might have debuted against Lee actually, a couple of years back when Lee beat Wigan, when they were in Super League that year. I think he scored in that game, to be honest. Is that right, Hugh?
Yeah, it didn't go well for him back then.
No.
Okay, let's move on to another pretty hot topic. Obviously, with your background, Phil, you're a strong believer in the academy as it was your baby for many, many years, and you're never going to lose the feeling for that, I'm sure. Some people, there has been some suggestions that we should look to get rid of the academy and utilise that funding to strengthen the first team or to do whatever. That's the question I'd like to put to you. What's your thoughts on A, should we keep the academy or should we get rid of it? And then also a bit of an understanding of the funding that you actually get for the academy.
Well, obviously, from my point of view, I'm an advocate of sort of youth development. I'm an advocate of young players, young men really, who've got aspirations and potential to become senior rugby players. That they deserve an opportunity, and I think over the years we've demonstrated that we have given people opportunities and we've put them into a pathway that's helped facilitate their development. And quite frankly, if it hadn't been for the academy this year, we wouldn't have a team. We definitely wouldn't have had a team to put out. So philosophically, 100%, I would always have an academy at the club. I think if it was an academy that wasn't producing players or helping to develop players for the first team, and we had we did have a massive budget, like teams like Warrington and Leeds, I quite often look at those clubs and think, well, what's the point? What's the point you have in an academy? The lads that they've got in their systems could quite easily come over here. The pathway would be a little bit clearer to get to our first team. you look at somewhere like Leeds at the minute, I don't know what their sort of intentions are, but they're obviously spending a lot of money bringing players in from overseas, and to go to a club like that, your probably pathway could be blocked a little bit. Same with some of the other clubs. So 100%, I think we need to do our level best to retain an academy. The way the academies are funded, we don't get a global pot of money from the RFL. So the money that we get is separated into different pots. So you get your money to pay for your first team squad, and you get your money to pay for your academy. So we don't get a big pot and decide, I'll tell you what we'll do, we'll spend 250 grand on an academy out of that pot. If we went to the RFL tomorrow and said, you know what, we're going to disband our academy and we're going to put that funding into the first team, well, the answer would be no straight away, because your funding through your academy is ring fence to go into your academy. We have to demonstrate to the RFL that we get a level of base funding, which is 100,000 to run the academy. We've got to match that as well. We've got evidence that we're matching that. We also get on top of that a proportion of reward funding. Currently, this year we should be getting 75,000 a year, and that's related to how successful we've been in 2 years ago. So there's always a 2-year lag with your academy funding, and that's dependent upon how many players that you get from your 18s into your 19s, then into first team. So we're the second most productive at this moment in time. If we weren't getting that funded, then we'd find it difficult to sustain an academy anyway. So if we didn't have an academy, we wouldn't be getting that funding, and we wouldn't get that funding to put into the first team. So does that answer your question with that one?
Yeah, it does. I think it needed answering as well. The next topic I'd like to discuss with you. We've obviously got a small squad and a very average age, young, a young, inexperienced squad, and the force of circumstances have sort of brought that around. We all knew that, that the euphoria of there's going to be some realism coming. You end up in the real world, don't you? So the euphoria of the saving of the club and that, with a young squad, and you're going to hit some flat spots and some plateaus. I'm going to talk to Kieran a little bit about this later on. But as somebody that's brought these lads through, and a couple of results go against the first team for whatever reason, must be tough for you to hear young players criticised, and maybe it's an educational thing where we all need to understand a little bit of the challenges of any young professional sportsman. Would you like to add on that?
Yeah, I think when we went to York a couple of weeks back, obviously we had a brilliant victory on Good Friday against Leigh. That was outstanding. We went to York on Monday, and that was a bit, brought us back down to earth a little bit, didn't it? But when you look at the lads that were in that team that day, the average age was 22, and that included Hep and McGrath. So if they had been, it would have been about
claiming early 30s.
Yeah, without them two being in there, it would have been about 19. We had, I think that day we had, Ben Davis debuted and Jaden Hatton debuted. It was a really, really young squad. I think, at Swinton at the weekend, we had Keenan Brand and, help me out here, who's the
Lloyd Roby.
Lloyd Roby was centres.
I didn't forget you, Lloyd.
Well, before I found some information out, but he's downloaded the Our League app and his team are orange and walls.
Oh, has he now? We'll have a chat about that later. You have a word with Dad and your father about that.
And on the wings, obviously we had Sam Freeman and Jaden Hatton. So, all of those 4 players this time last year were still running around playing for the academy. So to them to be able to progress and play senior rugby is a massive achievement for them. We've got Jack Owens at fullback, who, we probably talk about Jack now and view him as like a senior player, but the reality is he's still only 24 years of age. So the squad's really, really young. You sure? It was them couple of years at Saints that made him, wasn't it?
Absolutely, like that.
So, I think we've got to be really realistic when we're watching the lads, and I'm a fan as much as anybody else. So when I see lads dropping the ball or missing tackles and all that, I get really, really frustrated with that. But the one thing that these lads need is they need support and they need encouragement. What they don't need, and I feel quite passionate about this, the last thing these lads need is people berating them on social media, slagging them off when they're playing. You know, these lads, a lot of these lads are from Widnes and they live in the town. The parents are sitting in the stands, you know, listening to that. And I don't believe any of those players go out and make a mistake on purpose. And then let's get it right here. It's not just the young lads making mistakes. You know, we had some really highly paid players over the last 3 years consistently making the same mistakes week in, week out. What I would say about the young lads is they get better with experience. You know, that experience is massive. You said that to me years ago and I didn't believe it, but it is. You know, and these lads are going up against men that have, you know, a lot of them have played Super League. A lot of them are probably good enough to play Super League, but are earning more money working in the day and sort of training at night. So I think, you know, what I'd like to see is that the fans get behind them and persevere with them, because these lads, you know, they've already, some of them, give us 5 or 6 years, you know, of their lives. They've committed to us. Some of them have had opportunities to go elsewhere and stay really loyal to us. And, you know, probably there's a, you know, misconception about what these lads get paid. You know, without breaking confidence or anything, these lads, they're probably earning minimum wage, to be quite honest. You know, and I've obviously got an awful lot of time for these lads that go out and put the body on the line, and they do it for our club and our badge.
Yeah. Great answer. Phil, let's move on. Nearly at the end now, mate, don't worry. Let's have a little talk about next year. What the hopes, aspirations of the club are for next year. I've literally got 2 points here. Are we staying full time? Or are we going to look at a part-time model? I want an answer to that. That's the first part of the question.
You're not going to get one. No, this is what tonight's about. You know, it's about, I think, being really, really honest with people and sharing what the challenges are, you know, to what you just posed, that question you just posed to me. I think all of us as fans and as people that support Widnes and work at Widnes, you know, what we all want, and this is, you know, this includes the board of directors as well. We all want Widnes to be the best possible rugby league club that can be. You know, that's what we all want. But I think I nearly used that word, that custodian word there. It's not.
It's got a list here of words I can't use.
Not allowed to use. We're me and you and the people that work here. You know, we're really, really lucky, you know, to work at this club. I think we've got a really, really privileged position to be a one thing that we're all proud, you know, working for this club. But the reality is, you know, we're here to sort of run the club, you know, in the way that the fans want it to be run. You know, and I think that the board were very clear about that they wanted it to have, you know, fan representation. You know, we've got a board member for the very first time that represents Vicky and the members of that organisation. And I think it would be completely remiss of us to start talking about what we want, you know, without consulting the fans and without talking to the fans and letting the fans know, you know, what the challenges are and how they can support us. So, from an aspirational point of view, of course, you know, I want to be full-time next year. I want the lads to be full-time. I think the board do. You know, we'd love next year to have a big push to get back to Super League. You know, and I think next year, if we're going to try and get back to Super League, next year is probably one where we, you know, probably, you know, we might stand a chance. Next year, the year after, with God knows what's going on with Ottawa and New York and these other clubs that may be allowed to come into the leagues. We don't really know. So, but the challenge is, to be quite frank, it's finance. You know, it's financing a full-time squad. You know, I've talked already about the reduction in numbers of staff. We need to increase our staffing levels, and we need to try and develop a team or a squad that is capable of getting into Super League first and foremost. And that's not easy, because at the moment we don't know where we're going to be financially next year. You know, before we can start sitting down with players having conversations about, you know, do you want to stay next year? Do you want to sign a 2-year deal? Quite rightly, those players will turn around and say, well, what are your aspirations? You know, are you staying full-time, are you staying part-time? You know, we very quickly need to come to a decision about what that's going to cost us. And we need to communicate that very widely, you know, because we've seen how passionate our fans are. If the fans weren't as passionate as they are, we wouldn't be sat here now. You know, we know that from 9 weeks ago. Of sustaining a full-time squad next year, and more importantly, you know, beyond that, because, you know, it's all good and well aspiring and getting back to Super League, but Super League isn't, you know, it's not the land of milk and honey. You do get a bit more central funding, but your costs associated with being in Super League are much, much higher. And, you know, what we don't want to do is we don't want to make a decision that, yeah, you know, we're going to put all our eggs in that basket next year, go back to Super League, you know, and come straight back down. You know, when you look at the evidence of teams that are promoted from lower leagues into top competitions, it doesn't read very well. You know, I think Lee went up and came straight back down. London, you know, looking, you know, they're not in a good position at the minute. Hull have struggled, and you look at football as well. My brother-in-law works at Huddersfield Town. You know, they've had 2 years in the Prem and they've come straight back down. So getting there is probably only part of the picture. It's trying to stay there as well. And you know, I think we need to be really open with the fans about how hard the reality is. You know, we've got a lot of variables, I think, that and this isn't making an excuse, these are facts. We've got a lot of things that are stacked against us in terms of the population of the town, the number of community clubs that are in the town. Naturally, there's not as many businesses in this town as you would get in a city like Leeds or Hull. So what we've got to make sure is that we're pretty much bleeding everything dry and getting as much bang for our buck as we possibly can.
Okay, so let's look at the full-time model. Give us an indication of what size budget, what size turnover we have to stay full-time, and not just staying full-time for the sake of it, staying full-time with a squad that we've recruited that squad and we believe that's good enough to go back up next year. So what figures are you looking at there?
I think, you know, and I obviously haven't got all of the answers, and I also don't think, by the way, Dave, there's a correlation between what you spend and how successful you are. I think, you know, what you spend has also got to be, you've got to be working really, really hard with that as well. You know, I think we've seen that Toronto last year were a shoe-in to get promoted, you know, against a squad that I don't hazard a guess was spending 25% or, you know, what Toronto was spending. So there isn't always, you know, a correlation between that. But I think, you know, and this is, you know, I spoke to Kieran about this. Kieran was involved with Lee when Lee got promoted. And we think probably all in all we need to be bringing about between 1.4 and 1.5 million into the organisation next year to be able to have a realistic chance of getting promoted.
Okay, so that's a figure out there. 1.5 million we need to be bringing into the organisation. With what the plans we've got in place, with what our aspirations are to grow whatever, you know, revenue streams in and sustain the crowds, etc. Is there a shortfall in that? That's what we're going to spend. What have we got coming in? And if so, is there a shortfall in that?
Well, just before I get on to what we'll bring in, I think it's worth breaking that down so people have an understanding of where that sort of 1.4 mil goes. You know, we think we need to be spending around 800,000 on the playing squad. Then there's about 600,000 then, which is split across probably about 3 areas. You know, 200,000 in terms of performance staff, 200,000 on back office staff. Obviously you're on significant wage there, Dave, you're taking that.
What are you laughing at, pricing?
And then operational costs. And there's obviously, we rent the stadium. That costs us a fair bit. I mean, the council have been brilliant in what they've done for us so far in terms of the cost of that. But you've got things like, medical bills. Medical bills are absolutely astronomical, so we have to budget anywhere between 75 and 100,000 a year for players to have scans and surgeries and whatnot. So that's how that breaks down. On the other side of the ledger, I suppose, is how we bring that money in. So we're probably looking next year, I think, at probably somewhere around 300,000 from the RFL. This time last year, I think we were about 1.8 million was coming in from the RFL. So we've gone from that to potentially 300 grand, and the way that's broken down, we get, this is still yet to be decided, but we think we're probably going to get 110 grand, all the championship teams will get that. Then we'll get 15 grand for every position we finish in the league, as you go up, so you get some reward funding there. And then there's 4 pots of 19,000, one based upon your data that you can collate, one on your attendance, one on governance, and one on financial sustainability. So that's 76,000 there. I'd be pretty confident with the full-time staff that we've got in place that we'd be able to get all that return on investment money. So that's the sort of 300 grand, and then to be quite frank, Dave, it's over to you to bring the 1.1 million, isn't it?
You're laughing again, pricing.
No, I think the way it breaks down there, you've obviously got the season tickets, which would be massive.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of income, and again, we said this from the start, we've got to try and give the fans a team that they're proud of. That they want to come and watch. And I think this year, last month's Members Monday was a disgrace in that Sam Wilde got try of the month, which was that was ridiculous. Like the one that should have got it was Keenan Brand's try, the chip over, Jack's forward pass, and that try was made on the scholarship pitches, wasn't it, Dave?
Exactly.
So, I've lost my train of thought there.
Leave him alone. Leave him alone. The boss is talking.
I've got one last thing I'd like to ask you.
No, season tickets.
Oh, season tickets,
yeah. I think last year, the season tickets, it's fair to say, didn't sell very well. I think on the back of being relegated, obviously that didn't help. And there wasn't the galvanising effect that the previous regime, were after. I think, I've been looking at prices for the last couple of weeks of what Bradford charge and Huddersfield, Rochdale and other teams in the Championship, and just as a ballpark, if we had 3,000 season tickets bought, on average 150 quid, it's 450 grand. That's a lot of money that's coming in. Obviously there's yourself, Dave, with the commercial and sponsorship kind of thing, and you told me before that you're confident of bringing in, what was it, 40 grand in, something like that.
That's this week.
Yeah, we wish. Yeah. That's what the previous regime were probably telling you. So there's
He's only joking,
yeah. There's tickets on match day in terms of people walking up, away fans turning up. People are still, Widnes fans, not all of them buy season tickets, they prefer to come and pay on the day. That can add up, and that's back on ourselves again to promote the home games, to make sure that we're giving people a reason, to come to support.
Yeah.
That links in with the community department and getting out into the schools and the community clubs to give kids an opportunity to come and support us, and also the lads on the pitch. The better the lads are playing, and the more results we're getting, the more likely people to come and watch us.
Absolutely. Last thing I'd like you to give us an answer on, and an update on, with a bit of detail around it, please, Philip. Parachute payments. What's outstanding, and how are we getting it? And if not, why not?
Shut the ball down, Rex. Is the question. That was my question.
In terms of the parachute payment, there's 2 pots of money, if you like, that we were receiving as a club that is determined by Super League. The first one being the academy monies. So the academy funding comes from the Super League money, and obviously when we were relegated from Super League and we went into administration, you know, I think some of the other Super League clubs, you know, have probably gone to Robert Elston, the CEO of Super League, and probably gone to the RFL and, you know, said, well, why is Super League funding a championship club to have an academy? Obviously the parachute payment, that was £500,000. The idea behind the parachute payment is it allows you to maintain an infrastructure that lets you have a real crack at getting back to Super League within that, you know, the year after you've been relegated. We were sort of advised that because so much of that parachute payment had already been brought forward and spent, that it would be advisable.
This is pre-administration.
This is pre-administration, you know. We haven't got, you know, I haven't got the exact figures of what was brought forward, but we believe it's over 50% of that money was brought forward, and that money was designed to be over 12 months. So that money had been brought forward and spent in probably 3 or 4 months. A lot of that probably went on, you know, at the time we had, there was staff and there was players that were sort of released and their contracts had to be honoured. So a lot of that parachute payment probably went on probably doing the right and honourable thing and paying people, but obviously that hasn't helped this current regime. So I think it's a long answer to your question, but it's highly unlikely we'll be getting any parachute payment.
Well, we are where we are with that. You know, sometimes whatever the reasons are, they're out of our control, and we've just got to get on with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found that insightful and interesting. We've got questions at the end. Thank you, John. Phil will be back up.
It's not a question.
Oh, go on then.
I know when we first went into administration, I was down here the first day, remember? And it all happened.
You was.
I was so proud of Kieran and the lads the way they all took it on the chin. Just got on with everything. But there are 2 fellas who never moved an inch, and he sat on the stage there. Thanks, boys.
Ladies and gentlemen, a really honest debate and honest answers. I'll call the Chief Executive, Phil Finney.